So if you have an interview style podcast or you have guests sometimes, but you're not quite sure how to approach the monetization conversation, this video is for you. Hey guys, I'm Ariel. I'm your business podcast coach, and I want to help you get over some of these hurdles when it comes to podcasting and podcasting efficiently. So I got a question this week and it was around monetization. So I figured I would dedicate this video to talk about how do you ask a guest about monetization before they come on the podcast or even at all. And this conversation comes up at a good time because I've actually had to go through my own thought process and, confidence exercises around asking for the money myself. And there are a couple things that I did in my podcasting process that made it a lot easier. So if you want to have those conversations on a regular basis and turn your podcast from regular great conversations to conversations that add value to your audience, to your guests, and ultimately to your pockets, then maybe you can borrow a couple things from this process. So the quick and easy answer to when should you have the conversation with your guests about monetization, it's gonna be in the discovery call. But there's a couple things that you have to do to prepare for this call. Not only is the discovery call very important, but there are other elements of the process, which we will get to later in the video, that you wanna make sure you have in place so that you ultimately get paid. So grab your notebooks. We're gonna get really down into the details. And if you have any questions, you can put it in the comments so that I can address everyone specifically. All right, let's get into it. So a lot of podcasters deal with the challenge of monetizing their show. And this isn't because there are lack of opportunities. This could be because of fear of rejection, or you don't know where the value is in your show, or you might just be feeling like, I don't know how to seamlessly integrate the monetization part into a natural, authentic conversation. So to get out of my own way and help you get out of your own way, I have a 3-step process that's literally going to take you from the beginning of the relationship to checking in on your revenue stats so that you can actually run your podcast like a business. All right, so the first step is to make sure there's alignment before the interview. So what this means is you know what they are all about. You know that they sell a product or a service related to their platform, and you know on a rough end how much it might cost, whether it's a high-end coach or someone who creates digital products for a lower ticket. So whether a guest reached out to you and says that they want to be on your podcast, or you reached out to them and said, yo, I want to connect, you need to make sure that they pass 3 things before you actually have them on your show. The first is, do they fit your criteria? Now, based on the mission of your podcast, you've set a predetermined criteria about the person, the topics that they'll talk about, and the specific value proposition that you think they offer to your audience. And the second thing is making sure they pass the vibe check. Is this somebody you can have a conversation with or that your audience could vibe with? Just that alone really makes the conversation interesting, and you don't have to go much further than that. The last part is monetization. So you should already know what their platform is about and what type of services they offer. You might not know specifically what they offer, but you can tell whether they're offering a high ticket or low ticket, so you can understand how to have this monetization conversation later on in the process. These are the things that you actually want to know so that you know how to approach the conversation and what percentage you want to talk about before you actually go into this monetization conversation. For example, if you're about to interview a high ticket coach and their products range from between $5,000 to $15,000, well, depending on what offer you guys want to talk about on the show, you might want to discuss a 10 to 15% affiliate income so that every time someone clicks on your link and purchases something from them, you get a 15% commission on the back end. In addition to that, you also want to have the conversation with this guest if they want to provide a discount for your listeners. So not only do you end up getting cash for your referral, but you also, simply because your community is awesome, you give them a discount because they watched this episode. It's a win-win-win all the way around. The second step in your 3-step process is to have an onboarding process. So what this means is you set clear expectations from the moment you guys express interest in doing a collaboration, and then you set clear expectations during the interview, and lastly, you set expectations afterwards. But we'll do a quick overview so you understand the parts that go into the process. So here's how your discovery call should flow. Now, you don't have to send this beforehand, but have an agenda. Know the specific questions that you're going to ask before you ask them, and make sure you hit the points that need to be hit so that you can gather the right information on the back end for post-production. This is where you can actually set the vibe check. That way they can offer additional topics that you guys can talk about on the show that you might not have known. First, you want to welcome them in. In this welcome, you want to let them know whether you're going to be recording this discovery call or not. Some people want to be recorded for content's sake, and some people don't want to be recorded because you never know what's going to come up in the discovery call. It's totally your decision, but you want to welcome them in and then state the purpose of the call. Hey, thank you so much for joining. This is going to be a quick 20-minute conversation just to make sure that your guest appearance on the show aligns with your goals and it actually aligns with the audience. All right, so the next part of your discovery call is to talk about their business or your goals for this partnership. This is where you want to ask them if they plan to promote anything on your podcast, whether it's their product, service, or a freebie, so that you can be aware of that when you're talking about it on the podcast. So what's your goal when it comes to being on podcasts? Are you going on like podcast tour for awareness or something else? Now, a cornerstone question that I've always had in my process is to ask them, who do they serve and how do they serve them? This allows you to get very clear on how they talk about the demographic they serve so that you can loop that into your conversation naturally on the interview. So however the conversation goes, make sure you understand what success looks like for them on the podcast, even if you have to ask them right out. Cool. So what would success look like for you on this episode? That way, when you're promoting the podcast, you can make sure you're hitting both your goals and your guest goals, which makes it very, very likely that they'll share your episode when you release it. This allows you to get clear up front whether they're here to share their expertise, get more visibility, or specifically promote a product or service. All right, so after you talk about their business and the goals, now it's time to get even deeper into monetization. Here's the time for you to ask if they've set up an affiliate code already or if they can actually do that for themselves or have their admin do it for you. If they said they want to promote something on your podcast, not only do you want to track views, comments, and all of the social media tactics, but you also want to track revenue. Was this episode able to generate revenue for you and your guest? If you're able to share these stats after the interview, then you'll be able to build a continued relationship with the guest based on the success of your episode. And perhaps there's an opportunity for another episode in the future. Other specifics you might want to bring up is, do they have a call to action that they typically lead with? That way you can talk about it naturally or even use their own language in the episode. This helps with the conversation flow so that there's no surprises in the interview. Now, this next part of the discovery call is optional. However, it's very, very valuable if you haven't gotten to it earlier in the conversation. And that's getting a good gist of what type of content you're gonna talk about on the show. So you might want to get clear on if they understand who your audience is and how they can add value to your audience. So a question simple like, all right, so one of my last questions is, based on what you already know about the podcast, what are some of the topics that you know you want to cover so that you can help the folks the most? Here's a quick tip for success. If you want to make sure that they can fit your audience standard, then let them know a couple of past episodes that performed well so they can get a good idea of how they can either step it up a notch or deliver the exact same value. I've had a couple guests compete against who's going to have the best views and who's going to have the best offer for the audience. And honestly, it's been really fun being able to track that performance on the back end. So maybe you want to do something like that. But the point is, offer as much information as you can so that they can deliver as much value to your audience as possible. All right, perfect. So we typically release your episode 3 to 5 weeks after we record it. So you're going to receive an email way before then with the promotional materials and any other things that, just in case you want to change things before we release it. Cool. Got you. So we usually do work and play at the end of our affiliate link. So is that something you can provide before we actually record the episode? So the last part of your discovery call is to just set expectations for the next step. Before you get off that call, make sure that they know where they're going to get communication, how they're going to proceed to the interview, and then what happens after the interview. So summarizing what you guys have discussed and making sure you get those deliverables like their headshot and some of the promotional materials that they want to share ahead of time. This is going to be essential here. Make sure that they are clear of what the takeaways are before you close the conversation. That settles the discovery call. So as long as you're able to have a clear discovery call process where you get the right information, you set expectation, and you make sure you get the proper links and promotional materials that you'll need to promote the episode, you'll be just fine. So everything we've talked about so far sets you up for a really, really great episode. Whether your episode is in person or it's online, make sure you have a really good time, enjoy your conversation, and just have fun. But before you finish that interview slot, you want to make sure you wrap up this 3-step process by getting very clear on your post-episode follow-up. This means you let them know what to expect after the episode airs and how you will follow up with them depending on the relationship. For example, if you set up an affiliate partnership, then you want to lead with, okay, thank you so much for your interview. As an affiliate, we are going to have a conversation bi-weekly or weekly to make sure that we check our progress on the episode. That way, they know they should expect a call or an email checking in on the progress of your episode, which should also be the time where you ask for the check or the deposit or however you guys have decided to receive the cash. This sets a clear expectation on when you're going to check in on the revenue earned on the podcast episode, and then to check on the payout, whether it's through Zelle or some other form of payment before you guys have ended the recording session. Your follow-up process now starts here. After they leave the premises or you end the Zoom call and you guys are off to produce a really dope episode, now is the time for you to make sure the essentials are in your system. Do you have the affiliate link to promote? Do you have the marketing material that's ready to go out? And do you have a follow-up sequence already set in place that doesn't require you to manually reach out to the guest and ask for your revenue? Having this part built into the process relieves any jitters that you have or any nervousness that you might feel on mixing business and pleasure or feeling salesy, whether it's to your guests or to your audience. You want to make sure that you build all of this into the process so that you don't talk yourself out of the revenue that you've already earned. Remember, all of these conversations are great, but if you don't follow up on the process, that means if you don't get the affiliate link or put it in the description or send out the periodic emails and calls so that you check on your revenue progress, then you will not get the income that you were owed. So be clear, having this process is what helps you get out of your own way and turn your podcast into a revenue generating machine. Then as you've gone through the process over and over and over, you can start building the confidence to be a podcaster who earns without having to feel like you rely so heavily on your process. However, know your limits. If you need to focus on your system and have your checklist every single time you have a conversation with your guest, do that. They don't know that you have it on the back end, but you have it there as a reminder so that you don't get in your head too much and forget the key points. So I hope this 3-step process really helps you build a guest experience that also allows you to naturally get to the money. These 3 steps were personally designed to help you alleviate the discomfort of asking for the cash while you systematically build your sustainable business model around your podcast. If you want a system that helps you get to the money and have a really dope guest experience, then reach out to me on Instagram at @arielyoung_ or just drop it in the comments so we can continue the conversation. What was your biggest takeaway? How are you going to adjust your guest experience so that it saves you time, it alleviates any stress, and it makes you money on the back end? Until next time, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what was your biggest takeaway, and I'll see you in the next video.